today I would like to talk about curses. Are they real? What are curses and what types of curses we may encounter, and what the curse is from a spiritual point of view? What happens when people are cursed, and is it real? Is it real that a curse may affect someone so deeply as to change their destiny? First of all, I would like to say that all the knowledge and transmissions and information that is brought up here on this channel and shared here is unique. The frequency is unique. This is a knowledge transmission that is a blessing and a tribute to Siddha Tantra. So this knowledge is not a bookish knowledge, but a result of awakening, inner refinement, contemplation, and evolution. So it is a perspective. You may take it if you wish, as you wish. And speaking of curses doesn't mean that I would like to scare you, or I am speaking about something mythical. Even though our current society, the scientific society, sort of denies it and pushes it to the realm of occult knowledge or mythical knowledge, it is very real. And those people who experience these things in their lives, such things as misfortunes and losses and disease and so on and so forth, come to the conclusion that there is something like it, and yet they don't know how to take it and in which context. So I would like to give a perspective of what is curse, the nature of curses or curse, types of curses, and what is it really from a spiritual science point of view. Even though the word curse is scary, the curse itself is, or the effect of curse. Okay, let's just first define what the curse is. The curse is a negative energy wave or a flow sent to someone or towards something. So the negative energy, everything in the creation is about energy. The dimension and the world we're living is all about sustenance of energy, accumulation of energy, or the loss of energy. So the experience of curse could also be seen in the context of loss of vitality or loss of energy. And as we look through the down cycle, the accumulation of corruption is nothing but the distortion of our natural flow of existence, which brought up a so-called disturbed or distorted destiny. And the destiny itself, the way we experience destiny at this point of time, is a simply distortion. It's a distortion of the natural flow of self, of the collective self and the individual self within the collective. So curses affect the natural flow of the individual and the collective consciousness. They change the natural flow into a so-called negative. And by negative, it's important to understand self-destructive. So self-destructive flow means the flow that is turned towards the loss of energy. And that's why through the down cycle, we've arrived to this situation where our lifespan has shortened. Our destiny is full of different kind of unfortunate events, including diseases, decay, which we have accepted as a normality for these past 7,000 years, although it is the result of the corruption of the down cycle, the accumulated corruption throughout the down cycle. And so this one's individual or the collective conscious flow now is turned towards the energy loss. Now we have to understand, how do we lose energy in life? And we lose energy, if you've seen some of other videos, we speak about the corrupt self and other things in the spiritual context, the corrupt self, the aspects of the corrupt self, and different disorders. We lose energy through unhealthily or by relating to the projected reality in a very unhealthy way, creating unhealthy links, because our energetic substance is not fully perceived. The spiritual substance is not fully perceived, so we experience unwholesome self. And this unwholesome, traumatized, distorted, and corrupt self tends to compensate or look for that completeness, fulfillment of these energetic holes through the projected reality. So it chooses to attach to the projected reality, to create these links, because it doesn't feel fulfilled. And as the projected reality fulfills its sense of self temporarily, it attaches to the projected reality and gets into the addictive cycle. That's why the majority of people are in the addictive cycle. Whether they are in the cycle of constantly looking for new information, constantly looking for new source of energy supply, or they're looking for new foods, new interests, new hobbies, intoxication, entertainment, whatever you find in the projected reality interesting, and you create a sense of self through it, that becomes your so-called addiction or demise, or the way you lose energy and drain yourself, drain your vitality. To drain yourself means to drain your vital energy. So this is the way we understand that when we come to this world, our society does not provide us with the true meaning of existence. So we try to find this meaning through the means of the projected reality. And even though we may have a spiritual quest, it means that our soul has accumulated enough corruption that it's to the brim. And so we eventually arrive at this kind of a possibility to come across true spiritual knowledge. The corruption is still there. And that's where the conflict arises, even though you may experience the ultimate reality in glimpses. You may be interested in refining yourself. To actually do that requires dedication, time, and real maturity. And this maturity means dedication to the authentic self, the recognition of the corrupt currents within oneself, focus within, and the dedication to the authentic self. Even though you do recognize the corrupt self, even though you do recognize the distorted currents within, you hold on to the authentic self and cultivate it. To cultivate authentic self means to hold on to the natural flow, to the absorbed self, the self that is already content. So the awakening itself is the restoration of that content perception of reality, where for a moment we have reconnected with our spiritual essence, and this essence fulfilled our holes. And yet these holes, these energetic holes, are not so easy to fulfill or keep fulfilled, because we have a habit to fulfill ourselves through the projected reality. So they will, like opposite currents, be pulling us out of ourselves, our authentic selves, So they will draw. How do they pull us out of ourselves? Is they draw the attention, the focus outwards towards the projected reality. And so we would need to recognize it and keep our focus within. Keep our focus within means within the body, so that the body does not drain anymore, so that the body can heal itself on different levels, on energetic level, which includes emotional, mental, intellectual levels, and the physical level. So when we are fulfilled on an emotional level, on a mental, intellectual levels, we will also be choosing wisely in life and leading such a lifestyle which will enhance our longevity and health, or health means balance, and which will kind of realign ourselves with the projected reality, kind of in a healthy way. Because the false notion of spirituality is escapism. Escapism, running away from the projected reality, from the world, from the projected world, which is a mistake, because all these ideas of being in the will of in the worldly will, all these Buddhist notions or Hindu notions or other religious notions about the reality and the way that in order to evolve we have to run away from the world, or run away from the reality, go into extremes, is a false understanding of spirituality, which has been created naturally through the cycle of corruption, through the down cycle, where people were more involved in the projected reality in an unhealthy way. So the response to that was the creation of these sort of philosophies where one was pushed to the other extreme. And yet the true spirituality, natural spirituality, authentic spirituality, or the spirituality of the authentic self, has always been about balance, has always been about healthy relationship with the natural world, with the projected reality. And this healthy relationship can only be established once we've awakened to ourselves, our true selves, when we refocus within. And when we stay focused and accumulate or cultivate our true selves by this refocusing. So now we have identified that the curses means someone has directed their negative emotions and thoughts towards you. And so there are different type of curses, and they may have different effects. And so through the down cycle, we've experienced, and we're still experiencing, the consequences. So as I've been speaking for a long time, we don't need to expect the judgment day to arrive, because it has already arrived 6,000-7,000 years ago. And this is the age of Kali Yuga. So what are I listed here, the way we lose energy and the consequences of the curse. Because the curse is some sort of a distortion of the natural flow, you may say, but it can play out differently depending on the circumstances through which one acquired that curse, or if that curse has been passed on through generations or families, bloodlines, because after all, we're not an individual self only, we're also a collective self. For instance, through wars, through conquest, through employment of ancient magic towards conquest or exploitation of some people. Basically, at the root of curses lies superiority issue, or when one, say, nation or family or bloodline assumed superiority against the other, for instance. And so they started conflict, curses, wishing each other negative, by being ignorant about the fact that they are a part of the collective being. Because when we speak about higher yugas, it is more of a collective existence, considerate existence towards all the elements of the collective self. But the Kali Yuga, or when we are heading towards the down cycle, Kali Yuga, we are more dispersed and we are ignorant about the collective existence. And because we're ignorant, we start conflicting with one another. So all the fragments and elements of this collective existence starts getting into conflict with one another. And the result of it is the exploitation of negative energy against one another, against different groups of people or beings, and then against one another. So at this point, we experience this on daily basis, unfortunately. And so the result of this are diseases, traumas, physical and mental disabilities. For example, being born with disabilities is a result of curse. And when we speak about karmic effects, it is nothing but the result of not only one's own negative actions, because it's the judgment of one's actions that leads to the consequence. It's a feeling of being a victim. It's any negative emotion propels us to remain in this wheel of samsara, or worldly wheel. There's nothing wrong with the world, as I said, but the idea of escaping from suffering in this kind of a way by running away from the world is not going to lead anywhere. And it has proved through life that it hasn't led anywhere except to more suffering, more corruption, more misunderstanding, more fragmentation and dispersion. So it is very important to understand that our own perception, the corrupt perception, may also play out as a curse, as a self-fulfilling prophecy, you may say. So I listed here being born, for example, in a body with the wrong gender. For example, one inclination is towards one gender, but one is born in the wrong body. Demonic oppressions, spiritual attacks, different forms of disabilities, accidents and misfortunes, sudden deaths and losses, relationship issues, breakage of marriage and relationships. So all of these are the results of curses, of different sort of negative influences on one's individual and the collective self. The collective self, the group, that collective bloodline or lineage to which one belongs. And that curse could be coming from that lineage and be still affecting one's individual self. So if you look at this list of diseases and traumas, all these we've accepted for a normality. We accepted perversion, sexual perversion, any kind of perversion, emotional perversion. We've accepted traumas, negativity, negative emotion for normality. But all of these are the results of curses, of distorted destiny. And so we arrive to the natural destiny, to the true destiny, only then when we actually restore our authentic self. So when we restore our authentic self, we realize that all of these are the results of the corruption. So we kind of dissolve all these false concepts, false ideas. We refuse to accept the spirituality of falsehood, the spirituality of distortions, the spirituality of corruption that we are experiencing at the moment. That's why it's so difficult to actually come across the truth, because no one is the representative of that truth. Or very rarely you may come across that, because that truth is not born from within. And when one's soul, one's being aspires to the truth, one sooner or later comes across the truth and somewhat resonates with it and is able to recognize it for the truth. So another tendencies or other tendencies which represent corruption and which are the results of curses are addictions, distorted self-perception, escapist tendency, spiritual fanatism, religiosity, cultism, following deceptive gurus, deceptive spiritual paths, corrupt spiritual path. For example, having a tendency to acquire power, to be special, is at the core of that. Again, it's a tendency of feeling, it's a tendency of the limited and corrupt self. The limited and corrupt self is nothing but one's ego. And how do we arrive at this corrupt self or limited self or ego in a sense? So, and I would like to clarify here that true healthy ego is, or true healthy spiritual identity is important. But when you read about ego in spiritual transmissions, true spiritual sources, it's always about the corrupt ego that is at the core of all the mental, emotional disorders, such as narcissism, borderline personality, and so on and so forth, addictive personality, obsessions, and so obsessed personality. And so, in a way, or aimless, lazy, procrastinating personality. Again, aimlessness, laziness, procrastination, spiritual slavery are all the results of curses. And again, when we speak about curses, it doesn't mean that someone punished us or it's an unfortunate situation that we have to fight. No, whatever we have at this point, we are to embrace our corruption in order to heal. Because by denying, by not embracing, by looking for the paths of to escape, to run away, we aren't going to understand or experience true spirituality. We are not going to arrive to true spirituality, to true spiritual teachings or teachers, or we will not be able to hold on to them or to recognize them for what they truly are. Because our undercurrents, the currents which represents our corrupt and limited selves, will get better of us. So curses, in fact, result in a perverted and corrupt perception of self and the reality that shapes this false sense of self. And what is false sense of self? Is the self that is codependent on the projected reality. And thus it gets crystallized in the so-called limited or corrupt self or ego. So the curse itself is the negative current which is dominating in one's individual consciousness, because it also dominates in the collective consciousness or the group of that collective consciousness to which one belongs originally. And so when we live or perceive the reality through this corrupt ego or corrupt self, we are simply incapable of making healthy decisions, of relating, as I said, in a healthy manner to the projected reality, to the projected world. And the result of this unhealthy, imbalanced relationship is the kind of the draining or the loss of vital energy, as I said. And so this loss of vital energy results in the process of decaying and aging. Very often we think that decaying and aging is a part of our life, but it is not, because it is not the physical body that is aging. It is that vital spiritual energy that we never think about, that we never emphasize in our existence. It is that is being drained through the so-called normal lifestyle we're having. And this lifestyle can be even spiritual. A spiritual from the standpoint of, or from the standards of this current society. Oh, you're eating healthily, you're doing this, you're performing some spiritual actions, and you think that you're spiritually evolving. But spiritual evolution is always about the preservation of energy. So by doing the same things as everyone else does, but just in the name of spirituality, or limiting oneself in one way or the other, does not mean that you're spiritually evolving or enhancing your perception of reality, because you have not reconnected or restored that authentic self. And how do you restore this authentic self? You connect or reconnect with the ultimate being that is at the core of the authentic self. And once you've reconnected with that authentic being, you start cultivating the authentic being. It means you express yourself differently. You relate to the reality, to the projected reality differently. And so in this expression, in this relation, through these actions, you don't lose energy, because you lose energy through the false expression of self, because to express yourself in an inauthentic or corrupt way is much more difficult from the energy standpoint, because you have to waste much more energy, make more effort in scheming, in hiding, in occulting your natural self in order to appear something that you're not. But when you express yourself naturally, you become one flow. You've realigned, and that's why that realignment brings you absolute abundance. But it doesn't actually bring you the abundance. You are the abundance. Your intelligence, your natural being is the abundance, or the source of abundance, which is naturally expressing into the world. And this which is expressed is naturally coming back. That's why there's a saying, what goes around comes back around, because that you experience that what you are. And if you have been striving to become something spiritual, so you've been performing a lot of spiritual action, you've been reading a lot of books, and yet the result of that is constant misfortune, constant loss, constant deprivation, or some lack of abundance, losses, miscommunication with the reality, then something is wrong. Something is out of the alignment. It is very important to realize that it is easy to fool other people into belief that you're fine, you're spiritually aligned, you're realized, enlightened, whoever you want to be. But the truth is, you know the truth yourself. Even if you refuse to consciously face the truth, your reality will be the reflection of it. And when we go through the stages of evolution, we will be experiencing our own corruption, sometimes manifesting fiercely. You may go through different false paths, and you may learn different ways which are true and false. But this is only to come to the conclusion that you're facing your corruption. That even if you've experienced the awakening, even if you can be authentic self in glimpses, you are to cultivate it. You are to dissolve the corruption through this authenticity by choosing each and every moment to remain authentic. Even if you've experienced absorptions, long meditations, certain spiritual experiences. This does not define the level of evolution. The level of evolution is defined by humility, intelligence, and this constant dedication to be your authentic self no matter what. It's not a one-day venture or affair that, okay, today or 1 week or 1 month you've been cultivating it, and then you just chose otherwise. It is constant dedication, and that's why the true spiritual path is the path of selflessness, where no matter how tough the journey is, you choose to keep on doing the same thing. You are dedicated to the routine, even though if it feels boring, if it feels not interesting anymore, you are dedicated to that. And that's why the true spiritual knowledge itself, which is the emanation of the higher consciousness, tests each and every one of us. Are we going to be dedicated through this boring routine of the same life? Are we going to be aware through whatever situations? Are we going to be our authentic self, or we'll choose easy paths, the paths of escapism, running away, hiding away, rather than being one true self? So this is the way we choose our destiny, and we can change our lives any moment. But most probably the corrupt ego is so strong at this point of time that most of the people choose even the corrupt spiritual paths knowingly, knowing that they are the corrupt spiritual paths, and they still choose those because they give them a meaning, a false meaning of life. They explain their false reality. They give them a permission to remain that corrupt self, rather than to strive for purity, for refinement, for being authentic. Because in this day and age, to be authentic is so difficult. To be false, corrupt, pretentious is much easier. So we push ourselves through our corrupt ego towards suffering, towards misfortune, and this is the result of curse. So in a way, we enter the cycle of misfortune, or we entered it through the down cycle. The cycle of misfortune, suffering, and meaningless existence. Because when you're content and wholesome, you're not even trying to find the meaning to this life. You're not trying to ask yourself questions. Who am I? What am I going to do? What is my purpose? These are the questions of the corrupt ego. These are the questions of a discontent self. Because when one is content, wholesome, one simply does not have questions. One's routine may appear to be boring and the same throughout the day in and day out, from the outside, yet one feels fulfilled from within. One feels content. For example, you may come across a hermit, and they live as a hermit, yet they do not deny the external reality. They do not deny the projected world. They live as a hermit only because they are not on the same frequency with the rest of the beings, for instance. Not every hermit is like that. Then you can come across another hermit, and that hermit has just ran away from the projected world, secluded themselves, and yet they're suffering, they're full of torment, they're going through so-called hell. That hell that they ran away from, because they didn't realize that hell is within themselves. And that hell is their emotional and mental reality, which is unrefined. So the secluded artificial reality is not going to lead them anywhere spiritually, but to more torment. Because when we run away from the world, we actually run away only from the current circumstances. The world is our body, the world is our emotions, our mental states, and the perception of the reality in general. And so that is the real world that we can't run away from. The majority of people fail to understand it, unfortunately. And so we create this sort of theories and concepts and philosophies about, the wheel of the world in which we are tangled, or the wheel of samsara, for example, as in the Buddhist religion or some other religions, similar kind of theories, hell and heaven, and all these kind of notions. They're greatly misunderstood, because since we've so much focused on the physical and the projected reality, and again, we are not in the body, we're not nurturing the body, we are focused on the physical senses, the senses that define the projected reality to us, yet we are not actually within ourselves. So there's a difference between an absorbed state when we are truly within ourselves, and there is a corrupt sense of self-centeredness where you are focused on actually the perceptory understanding of the reality as if through the physical body, yet you're not in the physical body, because your mind is outside of the body, is constantly dispersed in the projected reality, yet falsely thinks that this projected reality and this dispersion and this connection to different elements of the projected reality defines oneself and defines one's reality, defines one's identity. And that's how we lose ourselves, we drain ourselves, and we age. And so that's why we also misunderstand a lot of spiritual ideas of the past, because we sort of project them to our current reality and we mix it with our current perception. And so we don't understand that the point is not to escape from the world, but to understand that this wheel of samsara, the wheel of the world, is related to the corrupt sense of self. The corrupt sense of self that we've created through the down cycle. And it is built around the projected world. So it is again, it is not about the world, it is not about the natural world, it is what we build around it and how we identify ourselves through this world. All our mental sicknesses, all our emotional imbalances are related to that, because our addictions, our obsessions about different elements of the world are actually not about these elements, but about the sense of self, the meaning that we leave with that element of the projected reality, and how we attach to that element, how we get addicted in the cycle of codependency, where that element starts defining our existence, or the meaning of our existence. And yes, there are sometimes more like kind of deeper addictions, let's say chemical codependency, yet it's usually not the chemical codependency is the result of a strong mental and emotional codependency, because one feels pain, one refuses to face that pain as a result, and gets into the addictive cycle to numb the pain. Yet the pain is only the indication of the corruption. The pain should be embraced and properly understood. But we have created the culture and the science to numb the pain, to run away from the pain. Yet the pain is the indication of our corruption on whichever level, on an emotional, mental, and then the physical level. It's the sign of a loss of energy. It's the sign that our being has been drained energetically. And it has been drained for a while, so that this pain already resulted on the physical body, on the physical level. But that drainage has been happening on the emotional, mental, intellectual levels, and then eventually resulted on the physical draining. So in order to come out of this Ferris wheel of false destiny and corruption and kind of a wheel of incarnation, we are to understand and return ourselves to a healthy, balanced being through the awakening. The first step to healing oneself is becoming aware of the pain, of the suffering, and its roots, its deeper roots. There's no other way. So in a way, we have been enslaved by our own misinterpretation of reality, by our own egos, and we still remain entrapped and enslaved by the projected reality through this corrupt self. And that's why we cannot come out of the wheel of samsara. And we accept these ideas that we have to age, we have to experience diseases, we have to die in agony. We do not understand the true meaning of liberation, because we believe that liberation is a magical power or some sort of sense of power. We feel deeply disempowered in this current age. That's why we've created spirituality of power, searching for power, searching for energy. We're like energy vampires. That's why the occult world prevails. The spirituality of occultism prevails. Demonic spirituality prevails, is because we're so disempowered that we need to find this power outside of self, yet we can't find it outside of self. Even if we summon all the demons, all the angels, all the entities, all the powerful beings, they are still a part of the creation. They are still a part of the collective self that we're not aware of. And we do not understand the meaning of all that. So we play with the fire. Eventually, most of the people trade their spiritual energetic essence to this false power. The true power is our reconnection with the higher self, with the higher being, the restoration of the link with a higher being, that being that represents the reality beyond the projected. And so this is the only way to realize what true evolution is, what true knowledge, what true spirituality are. Without that, it's easy to get tangled and to become the victim of one's own corrupt self. When we come across false teachings and accept them, when we entrap ourselves, is because we come to these teachings from the false self. We approach them from the false self, and that's where we receive the reflection of that. If you want to realize the truth within and without, if you want to come across something original, authentic, unique outside of yourself, you are to be that within. You are to emanate that. You are to represent that. You are to cultivate that. Then you will be able to connect to it with on the same frequency. Even if that is just to 1%, that 1% will pull you out of the wheel of samsara, of the codependency, of this worldly negativity that you're experiencing currently, because you will aspire to that. You will focus on that 1%, and it will pull you out. Thank you.